This is an episode of By the Numbers with me, Thorin, and my guest. It's not even my guest, it's a co-host, someone else who gets money from Alphadraft, MonteCristo. Hello, fellow Skrilla miner.
Enthusiast.
Enthusiast, yeah. Aficionado of sick Alphadraft money. Here is our weekly meeting where we discuss how excellent that service is and the benefits one would gain from playing on it if they were good and followed our advice and played it by the numbers. That's the end of the episode, guy. Could I? No, anyway, so obviously...
Well, if they followed our advice last week, they probably got fucked, actually.
To be fair, if they followed anyone's advice, like, I think actually, you know, well, let's just get right into it, Monty. Probably, I mean, bear in mind, we're not going to be doing Summon and Insight, but the fact that I'm just a photograph talking to people right now, I'm obviously not at home, so it's impossible to do Summon Insight. So we'll mix in a little bit of Summon Insight to the episode, okay? So I just want to, before we get into the by the numbers stuff, okay, I just want to put out there, did you see those glorious tweets by Miri where he was like, Vindication! Chaos style is
No. No.
He had some tweet that was literally just like in caps, like capital letters, like, I was right, see? And then he had one that was just like, Chaos style is a real thing or something. Like, okay, mate, well, you keep, listen, mate, if ever there was, I know I've overused this cliche, Monty, but if ever there was a time to say this, even a blind squirrel finds a nut eventually. But you shouldn't then consider it an expert at finding nuts and expect it to find them all.
Also, it's only 3 best of ones into the group stage. We're only 50% done, so I think it's a little too early to be celebrating on any front yet.
No, I think you're being unreasonable there, Monty. I mean, after 3 best of ones, I think we can safely tell that all the information gathered from like 44 plus games in LPL is of no meaning, and anyone who actually watched those games and attempt to analyze them is just a cretin who deserves probably to be hung, drawn, and quartered in front of the whole town square. You know, I think that's probably a reasonable punishment. You know, not just like, oh well, you got it wrong, better luck next time. You know.
My God.
So, okay, the interesting thing about how the group goes now, for people who don't know, is that on the first few days, all the matches were jumbled up. But after this break, each day is essentially the group playing out. And you just play it all out on one day.
Yeah, and the reasoning behind that is because of tiebreaker reasons, because if they jumbled them all up again, you'd have to do all of the tiebreakers on the last day or have an additional day for tiebreakers. Should they occur, so obviously that's not very feasible. So they have to kind of end each group on one day to have the necessary tiebreakers immediately after on that day.
So one of the things I think makes that interesting is that actually, I mean, in a sad way, we're not ever really going to find out like, oh, what happens if we replay the group again? Because it's going to be a little bit different this time. Because obviously if someone's very hot on one day, they might actually blitz all the games in a way that maybe they wouldn't have if they played across 3 days. Likewise, you don't have as much time in theory to recover from playing some of the matches to play the other ones. So it adds a little wrinkle to how it's going to go, right?
Right, of course. And also it depends. Perhaps there's a more important match played earlier in the day, which gives away some information, and perhaps another team is, you know, can quickly come up with a way to deal with that or not come up with a strategy in the appropriate amount of time. So it should be interesting to see how it plays out.
So, okay, day 1, I mean, it's called day 1. It's day 5 overall of the group stage is Group A. This is the one that's Coup, CLG, Flash Wolves, and Pain. So, in the overall for this one, it's going to be different to how we did the contests before. So, essentially, we're picking people for all the matches in this group. So, first things first, with how the group went already so far in this one's one where it feels like this was like a sleeper in terms of upsets. Because overall, it hasn't been as ridiculous, but it has in its own way. Like the top teams still all have a really good chance to make it out. Q still looks really good, but somehow everyone's losing to everyone, it feels like. So what are you actually thinking for this group going into it now?
I think that Coup should win this. I expect Coup to 3-0. That's just kind of how I think it's going to roll. Coup looked fine even in their loss to the Flash Wolves. They shouldn't have lost that game. They shouldn't have given up Gangplank in the draft, and I think they learned that. But their early game was still really spot on. And then they came out against CLG and absolutely dominated them. So I think that CLG without Lulu in the mid lane is not as strong of a team. And I think that the Coup Tigers also showed how to go after CLG by attacking Pobelter in the mid lane and then just forcing fights there that CLG doesn't know how to respond to. Moreover, CLG is going to be blue side, so We will see Ku, if they want to, get a mid lane counter pick or something like that, which is, again, not going to be very good for CLG's style of kind of ignoring pole belter and having Xmithy gank the side lanes only. So I think this day looks really good for the Ku Tigers. I think they should finish this strong, and it doesn't even really matter if they win all of the games because they just have to win the first one. Because if they win the first one, they can even lose a game to Flash Wolves or Pain as long as they just get one more win. They end 4-2. Then CLG, if they tie them at 4-2, which is even if they win the other two games, that's the score they get. They lose the 0-2 tiebreaker to Ku. So if Ku beats CLG, we pretty much know who's going out in first in that group.
So, do you actually think Ku will 3-0?
I do. I do think that. Like I said, based on how much of a blowout the first CLG game one was, and then how close the second game was, I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty on point.
So bearing in mind, last time around, Ku players were really expensive. Are you going to load up?
They're really expensive again. They're really expensive again. I mean, maybe
are they worth the money though?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's not that much of a difference, right, between the Flash Wolves and Ku. There's only a couple $100 worth of difference. But you're gonna obviously you can't have all Ku Tigers players. You're going to have to round out your roster because you can only have 4 players from one team, right? So it's not going to be all Ku. Obviously, CLG would probably be a good way to sort of just fill out the roster, as it were. And if you're going to do that, now we only have 3 games worth of statistics, so it's a little bit hard to tell. When CLG has won, of course, Doublelift has been doing really well, so you might want to fill it out with him, considering that CLG will likely win anywhere between. I would say they'll probably win. The thing about CLG that's confusing right now is we don't know whether it was a fluke because they got the Lulu that they won, and they played a very close game with the Flash Wolves anyway. So there's an outside shot that CLG sort of gets upset here and could not even leave the group stage. I don't think that's likely to happen, but Flash Wolves may actually pull something out. Hard to tell.
Yeah. In terms of figuring out between Flash Wolves and CLG, which is likely to get out as well, does the fact that Pain Gaming have managed like their own upset, does that throw any extra wrench in the machinery, as it were? Because obviously then it's not even just who you play there, it's if they just score a weird one.
No, I think that with Pain, as long as the TF is banned, then it won't be as big of an issue. So I don't think TF or Pain's going to win another game, and I think that the rest of the teams will be smart and ban out Kami's Twisted Fate. But in terms of points in this group, Kuro is actually has the highest number of points while ahead of any player on a team that has won 2 games or more. So there are some outliers. Actually, there's like Bjergsen actually had 60 points when they beat LGD, which is huge because they had such high scores, and a lot of the TSM members did. But Ku, they've got some really high point totals in Kuro and Smeb and Prey, and they've actually won more than one game, so it's more reliable, by 100% actually, the sample size, considering they've won 2. So there's a little bit more data there. Again, we're only talking about this very, very small sample size of games at Worlds, but we're using this information because it's at least on 518 and is more, while it's a small sample size, it is actually relevant to the patch that we're playing on.
So even though for each team you've only seen 3 games, collectively you've seen tons of games for all the teams. So here's the question I have. You thought coming into this patch it would be like super top lane meta, etc. Has that changed? I mean, remember Flash Wolves was one of your cases, right, where they couldn't win because they had stake, and that was the primary thing that was going to be the anchor, right? We've seen a lot of teams with bad top laners get wins so far in this tournament.
Well, we've also seen stake actually put in a pretty good performance at this tournament, right? Better than expected. So that's part of the issue. And no, it's still a very top lane focused tournament, don't doubt that. But Stake looks better at Worlds than he did in the LMS. I mean, he won lane versus Zion Spartan. He had some help, but he's been playing pretty well. And Zion, I think, has been exposed a little bit because he's actually playing against world-class top laners for the first time instead of just in NA where all the tops are absolutely pretty much.
What did you just say there about the NA tops? You went robotic for a sec. Did you say they're absolute garbage?
I did say they're absolute garbage, except for Impact. I mean, it's pretty much him and Impact and NA, and everyone else is not very good.
See, you say they're absolute garbage, Monty, but I mean, everyone who's not an idiot, aka an expert, knows that Balls and Dyrus are doing really great here, and turned out they were really awesome all along, right?
No, they're still playing pretty badly.
They're also dirty Darius pickers, so
yes,
that doesn't count.
Darius
so.
is well. I mean, so is Stake, though, right? I think Darius, to a certain degree, is the crutch of top laners at this tournament who may not be able to put out performances on champions such as Riven or Fiora, these kind of more high skill top laners.
So okay, in Group B, first of all, just give me what was really your reaction when Cloud9 actually did 3-0? Not just get one win, but completely clean sweep.
Fucking in shock. I mean, I don't really know how to answer that. It's pretty crazy that they've been able to do that. So now the question is, how have they been able to do that, right? Because
didn't they play a fairly similar type of comp in every game?
Yes, they did. And also, that's day 8, by the way. Group B is actually.
Okay. I've skipped ahead then. Okay.
Yeah. Let's go to.
Let's do this one anyway.
Oh, you want to do it anyway? All right, we can go in order. It doesn't really matter, actually. So Cloud9, I was surprised they did that, but again, it's been surprising that no one is banned out. So they banned, like, their strategy has been based around getting Tristana and Azir and Vhagar and creating these sieges while sort of letting Balls just stand there and not actually put any weight on him to split push or do anything besides group with the team and then punish people with Darius if they engage. And because Darius is very good when people try and engage on you. So he works very well. And I think Cloud9 has a very clever strategy to hide their flaws. But there's also the fact that if these champions are banned out, or if a team picks for heavy wave clear and just split pushes, they are not going to be able to take towers, and Balls is going to have to 1v1 somebody eventually, and that probably is not going to work out very well for them. So no one's exploited this yet. I think Cloud9 will probably lose a couple games on day 8. I don't think they're going 6-0. I think they could go 3-3 or 4-2, but probably not better than that, because once teams take a look at them, I think they're going to realize what their flaws are, and they will be punished.
So which teams are going to beat them, do you think?
Probably IG and Fnatic would be my guess, but really anybody could beat them. Everybody has the tools to beat them. Obviously, Ziv is a very good top laner. If AHQ can figure it out, then there's that possibility. Yeah, it's... I think that team is overperformed to this point, so I just don't think it's going to go quite so well. And all the rest of the teams are 1 and 2 in that group, so it's really hard to get a read on their point totals. If you're picking for fantasy, like AHQ Ziv is actually putting up really monster numbers. He had that great game on Gnar, which they won, where he had nearly 55 points in a game. But again, these are really big outliers. You do not want to pick Cloud9, which has always been true of Cloud9 when they play, because they just don't get that many fantasy points. They've been essentially just wave clearing and taking turrets, and their games haven't been that bloody. If you really, really desperately want to take a Cloud9 player, you can take Sneaky. But even then, he's only at about 29 points a game right now. Incarnation's a little bit higher at about 31, but certainly not top-tier pick material.
So since the rest of the group is all tied, who is the secondary... I mean, if we're not picking Cloud9 anyway, who is the main team that you want to be taking people from?
I think IG will have a better showing, actually. Once they actually kind of move game of the first day, right? Or their first round robin, I should say, when they beat AHQ. I was much more impressed by their particular performance in that game. They did have the rookie on Victor and everything. Now, when it comes to fantasy stats, their fantasy stats still weren't awesome. In fact, they were, sort of on par with C9's, more or less, in the same neighborhood. But I think this team will have bloody games in the future, and I think they're going to get their act together and maybe even exit this group.
What do you think about the fact that Kakao disappeared?
It makes me sad, Thorin. What do you think about the fact that Kakao disappeared?
It's like I said, no, I've given up on that idea, mate. That good jungler versus bad jungler equals getting in that ass. That never happens again. Unless it's Lulex who sort of finagles the deal. It just doesn't happen, does it? It's sad, mate, to see Cacao not getting in Reign over.
I mean, you saw that Lulex went like 0-8 on Gragas in this tournament, right?
It's good, isn't it? That's the only time it ever happens, though. Yeah. See, the sad thing is, Cacao was just off power farming, mate. He wasn't doing anything in those games. He was playing like a scared little biatch. Yeah, he wasn't good, mate. That was not a good state of affairs, was it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, IG wasn't playing well as a team, but once they got Kid onto Kalista, they were able to shore up some of their bot lane deficiencies. They had Shen to help out too. Now, I think Kalista will be banned against IG, so Kid and Kitties might be a liability again. There's no guarantee that IG is going out of this group. I mean, honestly, Thorin, if I was playing Alphadraft, I would not play Alphadraft on this day because I have no fucking clue what's going to happen. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable making predictions because Fnatic has had pretty questionable drafts. They haven't showed up to the same degree that we thought. AHQ started out by having an absolutely garbage can performance against Cloud9 with that horrible Rengar, but then they bounce back, beat Fnatic in a comeback game, but then they lose to IG. IG starts out with some really poor pick and ban phases. They get it together for their last game against AHQ, but there's no way to properly predict who is going to do well here. For all I know, Cloud9 will 0-3, and then we'll have a tiebreaker between Cloud9 and somebody else. And, you know, that's another aspect of these groups, I suppose, that we should consider is, are there going to be tiebreakers? Right?
Who's most likely to have them?
That's the question, right? In Group A, we could see if CLG beats KOO, then loses to either Flash Wolves or Pain, and KOO beats the other two teams, we would have a tiebreaker for first place between KOO and Counterlogic Gaming. But I don't think that's very likely.
That's not so likely, though.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think KOO will just beat CLG and then beat everybody else. So I don't really think that's the most likely thing. In Group B, there's actually pretty, I would say, high probability of a tiebreaker for second, considering that there are a bunch of 1 and 2 teams so far. So we could end up very easily with 2 teams tied at 3 and 3. And I don't know who those 2 teams would be. Because it's like ridiculous. This group is so hard to predict at this point. Because Cloud9 is 3-0, yet I see flaws in their gameplay that could be exploited. So the question is, are all the teams going to adapt and Cloud9 goes 0-3 or goes maybe 1 and 2, and then do we have 2 teams at 3 and 3 or something like that? Is it possible that Fnatic goes 3-0 and is 4 and 2 at the end of the day? That's equally possible, right? We could have Cloud9 and Fnatic at 4 and 2 each, and then a tiebreaker for first place. I don't know.
Being as in we had these upsets, so obviously Cloud9 is the huge upset because they went 3-0, but Origin obviously exceeded expectations themselves. So Western teams are doing very well. Why do you think Fnatic aren't one of them who's doing super well? Like if those other teams did well and the Fnatic was stomping, it almost seemed consistent, you know.
I just think that with Fnatic, Huni hasn't been playing as well as he normally has. They put a lot of emphasis on him in the drafting phase, but doing things like picking Yasuo into Darius, that's a hard matchup for Yasuo, and I understand they're trying to set up some sort of wombo combo style composition, but just pick something that can split push against Darius. I think that's the key to beating Cloud9. You don't want to group while they're trying to group too. I don't know. Fnatic's been a bit confusing, and in terms of the fantasy points too, they've been absolutely awful. Reignover is actually in last place in terms of points while winning. Huni's in third to last. The Yellowstar's in fourth to last. They have 3 players in the bottom 5. I mean, Reckless is the only one who's been doing okay. So they haven't even when they win, they haven't been winning with overwhelming force, right? And their only win is against IG.
Who do you think the IG players to take for in terms of points would be?
Oh, God. As it stands right now with that awesome 1 game of sample size, I mean, you definitely don't want Kid and Kitties. You want Zatai and Rookie, because Cacao hasn't been really showing up that much this tournament. So I would take those 2. I would take those 2.
So, okay, the easy one move. This group was supposed to be like this, Monty, and it is anyway. This is the group where you get to get in a hammock, someone gives you a coconut drink, there's because Group C has gone exactly as prepared, right? That's exactly what you ordered.
Yes, the most predictable of the groups. I think SKT will go 6-0. I suppose there's a possibility that both SKT and EDG go 5-1, and then we have a tiebreaker between those two teams for first place. But I think SKT is going out here, and especially since SKT EDG is the first game of the day on the 9th, on October 9th. They don't have to EDG is not going to have much to react on, and they lost pretty convincingly off of some bad macro mistakes in the first game. So I think SKT just takes this group really easily. And if SKT does beat EDG, they're guaranteed, I think, first place out of this group. Yeah, they are. Unless
so the issue being in the past, SKT players are expensive.
I suppose if they beat EDG technically, H2K could 3-0 that day and force a tiebreaker with SKT, but that's obviously not going to happen.
That's how warped you've become thanks to this Origin and Cloud9 shit. Like you don't believe anything's possible, right, Monty? You go across the road, you're like, oh wait a second, there might be a jetliner just flying out of the sky right into me. Oh no, there isn't. I can continue on with my life. Okay, so
everything's all right. It's all good.
Yeah. Every time you're walking near a wall, you think to yourself, right, well, quantum uncertainty, there's like a very low chance I could just suddenly appear, the molecules rearrange themselves on the other side of the wall. I have to watch out. No, I'm still on the other side. Whew, I can keep walking around. I know, that's how you have to live now for them on it. You can't make analysis and predictions anymore. It's over. That game's over.
Yeah, sometimes I worry about when I'm walking on the floor that I'll suddenly just fall through it. There's always that outside chance, right?
Exactly. So, but here's the thing. So if the fans get to have their sick little dream that the experts are all wrong, and you're like, oh, they never knew anything all along. You know what my sick little dream is, Monty? The second round robin.
I know several of them, but which one is this?
The second round robin just goes exactly to plan and just crushes them. After the building them up, giving them that hope, just crushes them flat.
So you want to see like C9 go 0-3? What else do you want to see?
Well, I mean, at this point, it'd be ridiculous to say LGD will go 3-0, but at least get 1 or 2 wins on the board, boys. At least fuck up someone else's tournament. At least do that. If you can't win yourself, as Western fans know, at least try to fuck someone else's career up, you know?
That's the dream. LGD is so confusing, man. As a team, that their performance is just mystifying. So yeah,
so what do you think in Group C? Who are actually worth taking in terms of the points?
Now, here's the thing. EDG players, of course, are going to be better to take. We always talk on the show about how SK Telecom players, they're great, they're reliable, they produce wins, but they don't really produce that many fantasy points. In fact, if we take a look at this, even though they've won all 3 of their games, Marin actually is the highest, followed by Bang from SK Telecom right now. And yeah, they're kind of middle of the road. Marin so far has put up a little over 30 points in a win, but if you contrast that to EDG, of course, only 2 wins, but Mako even is above Marin. He had that great any game. Clearlove is above Marin. Deft is above Marin. These are all guys who have been doing really well. I would take Deft and Clearlove, definitely, because they just make so many points. We saw how bloody their game against H2K was. Very decisive win against Bangkok Titans, too. So when we have these teams like H2K and Bangkok Titans that are lesser in this group and just likely to get hosed by Edward Gaming, and EDG also they fight more, they get more kills when they win. So I'd actually, even though I think EDG will lose a game to SKT, I'd just take the EDG players anyway. Fuck it.
What do you think in terms of Group D? But the obvious first question, because they were obviously a team that was always great for points, is can Origin repeat what they did the first time around?
So the difference between when I talk about Cloud9, when I talk about Origin, is I think Origin is actually good. I think Cloud9 is one-dimensional and has yet to be exploited, but Origin is looking pretty strong at this event so far. And interestingly about Origin, too, is that they actually haven't been putting up that many fantasy points. Their wins have been relatively clean, more objective-driven. So they're not actually the best fantasy team to go for right now, which is a bit weird because, well, again, like you're saying, when we talked about Origin during the regular season, it was just points, points, points. Niels is one of the top 5 players in Europe for fantasy points. They're doing great. Niels right now is like 20th when we talk about points while winning. Expect is sort of right up behind him, but we're talking about less than 30 points a game for both of these guys so far. So in spite of the 3 Origin wins, there haven't been the fantasy points there to back him up. I mean, even Amazing, who's doing very well, right now both Amazing and Soaz are in the bottom 6 of fantasy players with points well ahead. And Amazing was putting up amazing fantasy point number during the regular season. So this is a team that's playing a lot cleaner League of Legends than we've ever really seen them play before, which is very weird and very surprising. So Origin players aren't even that great, really, which is a big turnaround from most of the advice that we give on this show. As opposed to KT, again, one less win, but Nagne, who hasn't been performing that well in terms of CS or laning presence, he's actually at 37.51 points in their 2 wins. Arrow is at over 40 points. So KT, I think, is who you want to go for here. And KT also, I think, will do better. I think they'll win against Origin in the rematch. It was a very good, very close game, but I think they'll win the second time around.
Now, in terms of the other 2 teams in the group, obviously, even TSM's win, unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that counts into their favor as much as, wow, LGD's really that bad. So it feels like there's no hope for the other 2. Can either of those 2 still get out?
But the thing is, can TSM beat LGD again? Because Bjergsen had over 60 points in that one win. It was such a sloppy shit show that who knows? You know what I mean? Who knows how good how bloody that game is going to be? Because one Bjergsen game like that is worth more than 2 of Niels's wins. Right? That's how many points he put up on that Twisted Fate game. So the question is, do you sort of like pad your roster a little bit, anticipating TSM to beat LGD again? Definitely possible. And if they do beat LGD again, it's going to be another just disgustingly huge kill, terrible game of League of Legends. The problem with taking Bjergsen is that the differential, so get this, Bjergsen's average points when winning at Worlds, 60.4. Bjergsen's average points when losing at Worlds, 8.31. So you have a 52-point gap on average between their wins and their losses. So, they get stomped real hard too. And if LGD decides to come to play next week and actually shows us what they're capable of, then it should be good night for TSM. But I think there is a reason, based on that one game and how great it was for fantasy and how terrible it was for normal viewers, that you could see some definite action there if you're willing to take a risk.
Does the fact that you play all 3 games on one day mean it's not ridiculous that LGD could still do it?
I think LGD could do it. Just depends on if they get their shit together. I mean, their drafts have been absolutely awful. Their play has been awful. Acorn has been awful. Imp has been the only one who's kind of been doing pretty well on his team. But TBQ obviously was sick. Maybe he'll be better. I don't know the answers to these questions. Personally, my feeling is that TSM will win again against LGD, because the team that I was watching play was so different and so just totally fractured from the team that we saw in LPL that they have too many problems to fix. Their individual performances have been bad compared to what we've normally seen. Their teamwork is bad compared to what we normally see. Their drafts have been bad compared to what we saw in the playoffs. So how do you fix all of these issues in a few short days? I don't think you can. I don't think you can fix all of them. So I would be really surprised if LGD went 3-0.
Sadly,
there's too much fucked up, right? There's too much fucked up.
Much like the Pick'em challenge, I'm pretty sure almost everyone who entered those original contests for all of Worlds, you've lost already. I'm sorry. It's gone to shit. Like, I wish it'd been different, but...
You know what's funny is that they ran those pick'em numbers and basically said if Worlds ended after week 1, there were something like 2.2 million people that participated in the pick'em, and only something like 137 people actually had the teams in that order out of over 2 million. So we're already talking about such an unexpected result.
I would like Riot right now to do a Kickstarter if you need to to create a documentary team, which a bit like the movie Free to Play for Dota 2, will go around and interview those people who had exactly those results coming out that way, see what their lives are like, see what their diet is like, see if they live near power plants or something, see what the water's like that goes in their place. I just want to know, Matty, what are these mutants like that really had those results in that order? Maybe they're just squirrels that just ran across a keyboard when a guy was about to put a real one in.
You know what's funny is that the best part of those pick'em results, Thorin, is that anyone who would pick those results for the pick'em contest is also incapable of actually picking a winner for this tournament. Because if you were actually deluded enough to think that Cloud9 would be in first place of that group after watching their horrendous gauntlet run, you are not a person who is capable of making the decision. You also think at that point that Cloud9 can beat SK Telecom, right? You know what I mean?
Why not?
So even in the next stage of the brackets, all of those people would be filtered out because they weren't basing their decisions on logic anyway. So there's no way that anybody can win, really, as long as these results, I think, maintain themselves.
Yeah, that's the problem, is because the real issue, I made a point about this in a video I made today, actually, there's not really enough rhyme or reason. Like, it'd be one thing if China had all sucked, but then EDG hasn't sucked. And then likewise, if the West had all been awesome, great. But then Fnatic's not doing that well, and even CLG's losing the game. So the problem is not really any...
is terrible.
Yeah, the pattern isn't really there for anyone on any side. Everyone would have had to do some crazy gamble to get everything right.
Well, and again, it's only 50% of the way through, too. Just look at what happened last year. Some teams like LMQ started 2-0 and ended up not making it out of groups. When we get some of these three-way, like 3-3 ties or three-way ties later in the group stage, we're going to have a tiebreaker and somebody's going to go through, and that could be anybody pretty much at this stage. So it's really, really hard to tell with only 3 games done who is going to make it out of some of these groups. You look at SKT, EDG, you're like, okay, well, those teams are going to get through. I feel very confident about the KU Tigers and KT at this point and Origin, but that Cloud9 group is... I think Cloud9 could easily go 0-3, and there's a possibility that we even have a 4-way 3-3 tie in that group, which would be fucking crazy. Could happen.
See, for me, the biggest disappointment in this whole tournament wasn't anything to do with, listen, LGD dropping off as a contender. I know that was hard to take. It was disappointing, but I suffered that blow and I continued on anyway. Cloud9 overcoming all those good teams where all of them should have been better and somehow it happened. Okay, I could live with that still. I could live with all these things, Monty. But TSM winning a game, why? In a tournament where people are getting stomped, good men are getting stomped out. Why did that have to happen, Monty?
They beat the best team in China, too.
Yeah, but okay, I have to turn evil again. I'm going to now side with the fans. Like, yeah, they were never the best team in China, Monty. Actually, everyone was overrating them. They just beat the worst team in China. And, and they didn't have a coach or anything. And everyone was overrating God V or something like that. I think I've got them all in there.
By the way, can I get some props for my LGD has no coach and they're not going to do well in drafts at Worlds prediction? Because that was pretty sick.
Yeah, when you said don't do well in drafts, so you didn't say like go 0-3, God V turns out to be actually Gold V and just get shit on completely.
I didn't say that. No one could have predicted that. What I was just saying, though, is I don't think they could win Worlds in the current situation that they're drafting. Like, that I saw their coaching situation. I thought it was really weird, and there had been a lot of very questionable things that had been happening, and all the drama about these releases of Chris, and it was never an issue. First off, I didn't think that Chris is some sort of coaching Jesus where he just comes in and saves your team, but I also think that just that level of upheaval in the team structure right before Worlds and right during the playoffs was a really negative thing for that group of players.
Okay, so to finish up, here's the one thing we're going to do, Monty. We're going to embrace the chaos. We're just going to say, let's say there was one more upset in the next round robin. Any of the groups, you have to pick one that you think the most likely upset is, and then people can maybe base their drafting off that.
All right.
Which one would you pick? Which crazy upset could happen?
Which crazy upset could happen? Well, is it an upset based off of the current results in the group?
Yeah. Like, for example, Pain Gaming beat CLG.
I think Flash Wolves could beat CLG.
Wouldn't that be great?
I think that if KU, especially if KU 2-0 CLG, the Flash Wolves are going to look at KU's drafts and try and emulate that and try and beat CLG that way. I think that's the most sort of likely upset that we're going to see. because obviously H2K Bangkok Titans aren't going to beat SKT or EDG. That's not reasonable. Given the current form, I don't think DSM or LGD are beating Origin or KT. And then it's not really an upset in that other group, right? I don't think me predicting Fnatic to beat Cloud9 in their next game isn't necessarily going to be considered an upset. Would you consider that an upset?
Not really. I mean, Cloud9 losing at this point, it's not an upset in any sense.
So I think the most reasonable one has to be Flash Wolves beating CLG.
I mean, it had to be something like that. Like, it had to be someone beating CLG. That's why I said maybe Pain, because you have to realize the huge upset there wouldn't even be in the game or like specific players. It would be that someone who didn't have a sports psychologist actually managed to trump a team with a sports psychologist. I mean, we all know sports psychology actually did turn out to be the meta philosophy of all human knowledge here, Monty. Like, even if you discover something through enlightenment or like study in the arts, for example, or sciences, that actually can eventually just be like reintroduced and integrated into actually, that was a field of sports psychology you just didn't know you were studying. So it's kind of a little edgy in-joke for anyone who knows what I'm talking about there. But if you do, just enjoy it. It's a freebie there, okay? Everyone else, don't worry about it. We'll get to that on a future episode of Someone Insight, I have no doubt. So any final words, Monty?
Looking forward to the crazy matches. Have you been even able to watch any League of Legends?
I watched a few. Luckily for me, there's this off day, but there's a couple of days between, so I got to watch some of the ridiculous matches. Because before that, I was doing CSGO and just watching the match. I was looking at the eSportspedia, like, yeah, I'm out of this. See, I'll check back later. This looks like a shit show. And then I was looking on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty much the worst it could ever be. I think basically, if League of Legends was all that existed in esports, Monty, that would have the Western fan reaction to these results was like the apocalypse. This was like the zombie outbreak. Like, it's just the end of all civilization. You know, no order, no structure exists anymore, and we're all just vying for the supremacy on our own. You know, it's every man for himself at this point, right? Every analyst for himself. Everyone's just turning on everyone else.
Do you like seeing the massive blowback that the Western fans have unleashed their fury upon the Asian scene analysts right now?
Especially the Chinese analysts. They're the ones. They're just holed up in a bunker somewhere, waiting for like next year.
I don't even get that, because it's not like EDG has done badly, right? EDG's been doing fine.
Yeah, but that's the beauty. That's why you can't beat a fan, Monty. Because what a fan essentially does, it's like a religious person. What they say to you is, listen, I love logic and reason, and all my opinions are based on logic and reason. If you just give me this one miracle, like if Jesus just came back from the dead or this happened, give me one miracle where all of space and time are paused and the laws are just violated completely, and an aberration of everything else we know about science and nature. And if you give me the one little miracle, everything else I say makes perfect sense. So, I mean, you know, QED, I am right. So basically, every fan who just goes, well, all of China obviously sucks, and you guys all overrated them. And you go, yeah, but what about EDG? Never mind EDG. I want to tell you more about LGD. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever region also, it is, they just have the one that they can kick in.
IG is still tied with Fnatic. There's still a chance that they make it out of groups and Fnatic doesn't, right? That's definitely an outcome that could exist.
Yeah, but that's when the Western fan who's just mainly NA is like, yeah, but I always thought those Europeans were overrated anyway. Besides, NA's really good. And you're like, yeah, but didn't Coup Tigers wreck CLG? Yeah, actually, CLG, you see, the thing is they didn't have Xmith. Like, they can never beat them, Monty. They can always find the one exception they need to make all the other information, which is destroyed by the exception, somehow work still. Whereas, you know what my real answer is, Monty, after seeing this tournament? More so than any other tournament I've ever seen, I just don't know for most of these scenarios. Like, I really don't have enough data, and I'd have to think a lot more and hopefully get some more information from the next games. I actually can't draw very many strong conclusions from these best of threes.
No one can.
Best of ones, rather, especially because they're not inconsistent. It's not like in general someone is winning all the games. So I don't really know. There's a lot of finger pointing needs to go on.
SKT looks pretty damn good.
That's all that matters, right, Monty? As long as your insurance plan. So that's like in the zombie apocalypse. Even if everything goes to shit, you know you're all right, because in your desk you've got like the world's best 6-shooter that's all gold plated. It has like homing missile bullets, and you're just even if it comes down to that.
I don't have that. I have the god tier bunker with 5 years worth of canned food in it, where I can just hide underground during the zombie apocalypse, wait for all the zombies to kill each other and eat each other and die, and then I'm absolutely fine. I just come out a few years later and it's all good, man.
And then Cacao comes to like the secret entrance, and he's like, "Monty, quick, help me! It's a bloodbath out there." And he's like, "I'm sorry, who is this?" It's me, your son." "I have no son." And then it's just disconnected. He's like, "What? No!" Then Balls is just behind him on Darius, like, "Time to play." Just comes in. Yeah. Balls and Rainover behind him. Balls Rainover at West Door, and as West Door charges in, Miri just goes, "He's a top 20 player, you know. I'd watch out for him." Like, anyway, we've got all the jokes. I think that's the end of the episode. If you want to play Alphadraft, and if anything, this is the ideal time to play Alphadraft, guys, because now you're going to get some of the craziest possible upsets can happen. And I've no doubt we can't see the salaries for all the days, but there must be some wacky salaries in there where some teams had like insane performance they probably won't repeat, and so you'll get insane value on someone who's going to do as expected, but the previous results mean that they're cheaper. So I think now's the ideal time to embrace the chaos style and earn some 6 Grilla. So that's the end. Play it by the numbers. I can't do my gesture, but I'm doing it now. By the numbers.